In 1963, the American Locomotive Company unveiled what would become one of its final attempts to compete in the road diesel market. The RS27 promised 2,400 horsepower from a four-axle frame, a number that grabbed attention across the industry. For Alco, this wasn't just another model increment. It was a statement that they could still deliver competitive power in an era where horsepower figures dominated purchasing decisions. But the RS27 story isn't one of triumph. It's a case study in what happens when ambition outpaces engineering integration. Only 27 units were ever built, and most spent their brief careers proving that raw horsepower means nothing if the locomotive can't deliver it reliably. The RS27 exposed structural limitations in Alco's design philosophy, limitations that would haunt the company until its exit from the locomotive market just 6 years later. This is the story of a locomotive that looked right on paper, but failed in the conditions that actually mattered. Before we continue, if you think our content is unique and informative, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps support the channel. Also, make sure to share the video with other train fanatics out there. By 1960, American railroads had fundamentally shifted how they thought about motive power. The question was no longer whether diesel locomotives could replace steam. That battle was over. The new question was how to extract maximum productivity from shrinking locomotive fleets while keeping labor costs under control. Crew agreements on most railroads were still structured around locomotive counts, not tonnage ratings. A 3-unit consist meant 3 engineers' wages, regardless of whether those units were producing 4,500 horsepower or 6,000. Railroads began pushing manufacturers for locomotives that could pack more power into fewer car bodies. The goal was simple: reduce the number of units per train without sacrificing pulling capacity. Electromotive responded with the GP30 in 1961, rated at 2,250 horsepower. This was a significant jump from the 1,800 horsepower GP18 it replaced. The GP30 incorporated a turbocharged 16567D3A engine and featured what EMD marketed as Advanced Electronic Control Systems. It sold well, more than 900 units between 1961 and 1963. General Electric, still refining its U-boat line, was steadily improving output from its FDL engine series. The U-25B, introduced in 1959, delivered 2,500 horsepower from a 4-axle platform. GE had designed the entire locomotive around that output, including upgraded cooling systems and purpose-built electrical components. They understood that increased horsepower required system-wide engineering, not just a hotter engine. Alco found itself in a difficult position. Its RS11, introduced in 1956, topped out at 1,800 horsepower from a 12-cylinder 250B engine. It was a solid, reliable locomotive, but by 1962, it looked underpowered compared to what EMD and GE were offering. Alco needed something competitive, and they needed it quickly. The decision to pursue a 4-axle design made sense from a market perspective. Road switchers remained popular because of their versatility. They could handle mainline freight assignments and also work branch lines or yard jobs when needed. 6-axle units were gaining traction for heavy haul service, but many railroads still preferred the operational flexibility of 4-axle power. Alco believed there was a market for a high horsepower road switcher that could do it all. What they underestimated was how much engineering work would be required to make that concept viable. Alco's approach to the RS27 centered on extracting maximum output from an existing engine platform. The 16-cylinder 251C had been developed for marine and stationary applications, where it could produce higher ratings, but locomotive service posed different challenges: constant load changes, variable ambient conditions, and the mechanical stress of continuous operation at high output. To reach 2,400 horsepower, Alco increased turbocharger boost pressure and advanced fuel injection timing. The result was higher cylinder pressures and significantly increased exhaust gas temperatures. These changes pushed the 251C into operating ranges it hadn't been designed for originally. Marine installations typically had access to seawater cooling and operated in more controlled thermal environments. Locomotives didn't have those advantages. Alco made some upgrades to accommodate the higher output. The cooling system received larger radiator cores and a modified fan drive system. Electrical components were upgraded where necessary, but these changes were incremental. adaptations of existing RS series architecture rather than ground-up redesigns. The frame structure remained essentially unchanged from earlier RS models. The trucks were the same blunt-type AR Type B design used on the RS11. The car body followed familiar Alco proportions. From the outside, an RS27 looked like a slightly evolved RS11. That visual continuity was intentional. Alco wanted railroads to see this as a proven platform with enhanced capability. Internally, the company faced pressure to bring the RS27 to market quickly. EMD's GP30 was already accumulating orders. GE was making inroads with roads that had historically been Alco customers. Time mattered, and a lengthy development cycle risked missing the market window entirely. The assumption within Alco's engineering teams was that railroads would accept some operational constraints in exchange for higher horsepower. They believed that crews and maintenance departments would adapt, just as they had with previous model transitions. That assumption would prove costly. The heart of any locomotive is its prime mover, and in the RS27, that meant a 16251C operating at the upper edge of its capability. At 2,400 horsepower, the engine ran with higher cylinder pressures than any previous Alco road locomotive. Peak firing pressures approached levels that left little margin for component wear or fuel quality variation. The pistons, rings, and cylinder liners were subjected to thermal cycles that accelerated wear patterns. Exhaust gas temperatures under load frequently exceeded 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit at the turbocharger inlet. While the 251 engine was capable of handling these temperatures, sustained operation at those levels placed enormous stress on exhaust manifolds and turbocharger components. Cracks in exhaust manifolds became common, and turbocharger bearings showed reduced service life compared to lower-rated 251 installations. The cooling system was one of the RS27's most critical weaknesses. Alco increased radiator capacity, but not proportionally to the power increase. The RS11's 1,800 horsepower output required substantial cooling, and jumping to 2,400 horsepower, a 33% increase, demanded more than just larger radiator sections. It required better airflow management, more sophisticated fan control, and improved coolant circulation. The RS27's radiator fan was mechanically driven, with limited modulation capability. Under high ambient temperatures or during extended heavy pulls, the cooling system struggled to maintain optimal engine temperature. Heat soak became a persistent problem. The engine would run hot, trigger temperature alarms, and force crews to reduce power output. In practical terms, the locomotive couldn't sustain its rated 2,400 horsepower for extended periods without thermal management issues. Electrically, the RS27 used a GE main generator that was operating near its continuous rating limits. At full throttle, the generator was producing maximum output with minimal headroom. This meant that any transient electrical loads, such as wheel slip events or sudden load increases, stressed the electrical system significantly. Traction motor flashovers became more frequent, and brush wear accelerated. The traction motors themselves faced challenges. The RS27 used GE Model 7V52 traction motors, which were rated for the increased current demands, but the four-axle truck arrangement created adhesion problems. Applying 2,400 horsepower through four axles meant each motor was handling roughly 600 horsepower. On rail conditions that were anything less than ideal, wet rail, leaf contamination, light frost, the wheels would slip before the full power could be utilized. Wheel slip wasn't just an operational nuisance. Each slip event caused electrical transients that stressed motor commutators and damaged wheel treads. Locomotives that slipped frequently required more frequent wheel turning and traction motor maintenance. The RS27's high specific output meant it was constantly operating at the edge of available adhesion, particularly when starting heavy trains or working in hilly territory. Inside the cab, crews noticed differences immediately. The RS27 was louder than an RS11, with more pronounced turbocharger whine and greater mechanical vibration. The control stand incorporated load meters and temperature gauges that required more active monitoring. Crews learned quickly that pushing an RS27 to full throttle didn't guarantee full power. It often meant watching temperature needles climb and backing off before alarms sounded. The operational reality was stark. The RS27 could produce 2,400 horsepower in ideal conditions for short periods, but sustained performance at that rating proved elusive. The first RS-27s entered service in late 1963 and early 1964. Within months, railroads began reporting problems. Overheating topped the list of complaints. Locomotives assigned to heavy freight service in warm weather consistently ran hot. Power derating became routine. Engineers would pull back throttle notches to keep temperatures manageable, effectively turning a 2,400 horsepower locomotive into a 2,000 horsepower unit or less. This defeated the entire purpose of the design. Railroads had purchased the RS-27 specifically for its higher output. When that output couldn't be reliably accessed, the locomotive became an expensive disappointment. Maintenance departments faced their own frustrations. The 251C engine at 2,400 horsepower required more frequent inspection cycles. Exhaust manifold cracks appeared earlier than on RS-11 installations. Turbochargers needed rebuilds more often. Injector tips carboned up faster due to the higher combustion temperatures. All of this translated into increased shop time and higher parts consumption. By the mid-1960s, most major railroads were consolidating their fleets around EMD power. Standardization reduced training costs, simplified parts inventory, and improved shop efficiency. Alco locomotives, even reliable ones, were becoming orphans in fleets dominated by GP and SD units. The RS-27, with its specific maintenance requirements and operational quirks, fit poorly into this trend. Some railroads tried to make the best of their RS-27 rosters. They assigned units to services where high continuous output wasn't required, local freights, transfer runs, or as mid-train helpers. In these applications, the RS-27 performed adequately because it wasn't being pushed to thermal limits constantly. But these were assignments that an RS-11 could handle just as well at lower operating cost. Other roads found that their RS-27s simply weren't worth keeping in frontline service. The units were too unreliable for through freight assignments and too expensive to maintain for secondary work. Faced with these realities, some railroads began retiring RS-27s after less than 10 years of service, extraordinarily short for diesel locomotives of that era. The Southern Pacific, which rostered 7 RS-27s, withdrew all of them by 1975. The Norfolk and Western, which had purchased 10 units, retired theirs even earlier. These weren't locomotives wearing out from decades of hard use. They were being withdrawn because they never performed as promised. The RS-27 production run totaled exactly 27 units, fitting, given the model designation, but telling in terms of market reception. Between 1963 and 1964, only 3 railroads purchased RS-27s: Norfolk and Western, Southern Pacific, and the New York, Susquehanna and Western. The small production numbers reflected weak market interest from the start. Some railroads attempted to improve their RS-27s through modifications. The most common approach involved derating the engines back to more conservative output levels. By reducing fuel delivery and boost pressure, it was possible to bring the 251C down to 2,000 or 2,200 horsepower. This sacrificed the locomotive's primary selling point, but it did improve reliability and reduce maintenance costs. Other modifications focused on cooling system improvements. Some units received auxiliary cooling fans or upgraded radiator sections. These retrofits helped, but they couldn't fully compensate for the fundamental mismatch between power output and cooling capacity in the original design. A few RS-27s underwent more extensive rebuilds. Some had their 16-cylinder engines replaced with 12-cylinder 251 units, effectively converting them into heavy RS-11s. Others were relegated to yard service where their road service limitations didn't matter. These conversions kept the units earning revenue, but they represented admissions that the RS-27 concept hadn't worked as intended. The secondary market for used RS-27s was essentially non-existent. Railroads shopping for secondhand power in the 1970s had plenty of EMD and GE units to choose from, locomotives with established parts support and known performance characteristics. An RS-27, with its reputation for temperamental behavior and orphaned status in most fleets, held little appeal. By 1980, most RS-27s were gone. A handful lingered into the early 1980s on smaller roads or in industrial service, but even these survivors were typically operating at reduced ratings or heavily modified. the RS27 never achieved the 20 to 30-year service lives common among its contemporaries. The RS27 failure wasn't simply about one unsuccessful model. It illustrated deeper problems in how Alco approached locomotive design and market competition by the mid-1960s. EMD's philosophy had always emphasized incremental improvement and thorough testing. When electromotive increased horsepower, they did so across integrated systems. The GP30's 2,250 horsepower rating came with redesigned cooling, upgraded electrical components, and improved control systems. EMD didn't just bolt a hotter engine into an existing frame and hope for the best. General Electric took a similar approach. When GE developed the U25B, they engineered the entire locomotive around the FDL engine's characteristics. Cooling systems were purpose-designed for the output levels. Electrical components were sized appropriately. GE understood that horsepower was a system-level achievement, not just an engine specification. Alco's approach with the RS27 revealed a company reacting to market pressure rather than leading through innovation. They saw competitors offering higher horsepower and responded by pushing an existing engine harder. The supporting systems received updates, but not the comprehensive redesigns necessary for reliable, high-output operation. This pattern repeated in Alco's later models. The Century Series locomotives, introduced in 1963, showed better system integration than the RS27, but they still struggled with reliability compared to EMD and GE equivalents. Alco could design impressive engines. The 251 was fundamentally sound, but the company never fully mastered the integration of all locomotive systems into cohesive, reliable packages. Financial pressures made these problems worse. Alco's locomotive division was losing money by the mid-1960s. Development budgets were tight. Engineering resources were stretched. The company needed sales to justify continued investment, but couldn't generate sales without competitive products. It was a spiral that the RS27's market failure only accelerated. When Alco exited the locomotive market in 1969, the company left behind a legacy of capable engines installed in locomotives that never quite lived up to their potential. The RS27 stands as perhaps the clearest example of this pattern, a locomotive with impressive specifications that couldn't deliver those specifications reliably when it mattered. Horsepower alone has never won railroad contracts. What wins is horsepower that arrives consistently, day after day, with predictable maintenance requirements and manageable operating costs. The RS27 proved that 2,400 horsepower means nothing if the locomotive can only sustain it briefly before overheating, or if crews learn to avoid using full throttle because reliability suffers when they do. The RS27 taught a lesson that Alco learned too late. In railroad service, engineering integration matters more than peak specifications. The railroads that bought RS27s wanted 2,400 reliable horsepower, not 2,400 horsepower with conditions attached. When those conditions became clear, the market moved on to manufacturers who could deliver what they promised. That's the RS27's legacy, a reminder that, in locomotive design, how you deliver power matters as much as how much power you claim.